Reality.
Therapist perception.
Bachelorette.
Reactivity TV is up first. Mm-hmm. And we are recapping Bachelor in Paradise episodes 6 and 7. So I think we're at week 4.
Yeah.
Already,
but also speed this up.
Yeah, seriously, I know. I think there are 16 episodes, so we're not even halfway done.
Yeah.
But I know we were chatting, and there was a lot that happened in these 2 episodes. There was a lot that happened just kind of in the structure of the show, that they made big changes to the way that the structure works in general. But there were also a lot of meaningful conversations and dynamics that we saw play out on the show. But I know that there was one that we both wanted to cover today.
Right. And we're not totally aware of of both of our takeaways from it, but we definitely had one moment that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, or one relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Okay. So the big thing that happened this week was the date between Michael and Danielle. Mm-hmm. So Danielle came down from the beach to the beach pretty late. Michael was kind of thinking this is it for him maybe, and then Danielle came down, and she is from Nick Vile's season, mm-hmm. right? And she and Michael seem to be on paper this potential perfect match with their background in the losses that they've experienced. Mm-hmm. Her fiance that she lost 10 years ago, and his wife, mm-hmm. And the mother to his son. Mm-hmm. And that just seemed to really turn things around. And he got a date card, and he brought her on a date. Mm-hmm. And so that date was definitely something that was really realistic, and it was there was a lot of depth to it, and it was really meaningful. And they talked about their grief, and they talked about what dating is like for them now, and it was just a very real conversation.
Yeah, yes. And we've watched Michael since he was on Katie's season start to really navigate, or he let us in, I guess, in his path and his journey to navigating his grief process and trying to explore love and relationships after the death of his wife, which he continues to remind us that she was a big love, his love of his life. It was such a meaningful relationship. And we've watched him he's so expressive, really talk about what this process has been like for him, what a struggle it's been to think about a new relationship when he's also still processing the loss of his wife. So yeah, seeing this next stage of him navigating his grief was meaningful in so many ways. Like you're saying, the conversation was meaningful between he and Danielle, both who have lost significant others. But I also think it was so meaningful as a viewer and as a therapist to be able to see real grief, or the actual grief process being put out there for America to see, and to normalize this experience for people, because I don't know that it's really it's televised in this way or represented this way, that it is so complicated and complex to be both grieving and wanting to love again, and the guilt that comes with that. And that's something that they both talked about, which it was heart-wrenching. And again, as a therapist, I really appreciated seeing that, because that is such a part of the grief process. It's normal. Mm-hmm. As uncomfortable as it is, and as hard as it is a normal part of the grief process.
Yeah. And I think that they talk about, you're talking about how it was displayed on television in this way that really, we haven't seen before. And I think that this show really emphasizes people being vulnerable, and people kind of telling their story a lot of the times. And sometimes we get a superficial version of that, and sometimes we do get certain levels of vulnerability that like pave a way for more connection and like an emotional connection in a relationship. But I do think that this was special in itself in a totally different area that hadn't been touched on in the show or like in any reality TV. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, when we've talked about vulnerability in the past and the way that it's represented on this show, it sometimes seems transactional, and as a result, it is often pretty surface level in terms of what people are sharing, and it really felt like they weren't being vulnerable for vulnerability's sake.
It wasn't performative.
No, it was such a way that they were trying to connect over having this really shared and unique experience of losing a loved one, and wow, it did create so much of a depth in their connection that they were able to not just talk about, oh, I had this loss, but this is how it's impacting me. These are the complicated feelings I'm having around it. This is why I have guards up right now. It was again impressive to be able to be that open about your feelings, your reactions with someone new and on national television.
Right. And I think there was that level of the fact that they had this shared experience, and they've suffered through this together, and they were really doing that for each other. And then obviously we just got to witness it happening. And that in itself, that dynamic, that back and forth of how they were sharing those with each other, they had this mutual understanding of this is a really difficult thing for us to go through, and we don't really know what we're doing.
Yeah, right. Well, and along with that, Michael talked about, for him, the importance of being with someone who is quote unquote battle tested, that has a deep wound, because when we all go through something life-changing or something that's scary or traumatic, experience a loss, it changes the way that we view the world. It changes the way that we think about things. It changes our perspective. And so it's really important that you can have an understanding to that level, to that deep level with someone else. And I'm wondering if maybe that's why with him and Sierra, things didn't quite click, because she might not have been able to relate to, I don't know, I mean, I'm making a lot of assumptions.
They didn't really show us a lot of their relationship. We got to see them like kind of snuggling up together, but like we didn't really get to see them having any conversations. Not that I can really remember.
No.
It was only a few weeks ago, but like not that I could see.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I don't know if that's because that wasn't there. That's just not what was shown to us. But I can understand. It's so understandable that Michael would be feeling that way in wanting a shared understanding with someone who's gone through it, who's seen a different side of life. Another thing that I appreciated them bringing up was, again, in terms of like normalizing the grief process, or just the experience of going through something that changes your life, is that as a result, you might be fearful to connect with someone again, maybe for fear of another loss or something bad happening, that's a really typical, normal response to a trauma or a loss. And at different points, they said something similar. Michael said, when things feel real, the guards go up. And Danielle said, things are going really good. Let's find something wrong. And they both kind of giggled at that. And again, that kind of shared understanding of like, okay, I'm doing this thing, you're doing this thing. And that they were able to kind of call it into the relationship, which again deepens the relationship.
Absolutely.
And allows for such a better level of honesty in really saying, I'm scared, and things are feeling real, and things are getting close, and I love that they were able to put that out there.
Right, just calling it what it was, and not trying to. They weren't trying to. Well, first they didn't mask it, and then they put it out there, and not trying to like necessarily make it any different or try to help the situation, but then they did in just being so honest.
Yeah, and I'm really interested and curious to kind of see where this ends, where this all goes. I had commented to you that I'm wondering if maybe Danielle is further along in her grief processing than Michael is. Her loss was 10 or 11 years ago, where Michael's, I think, is a little bit more recent, maybe 5 or so years ago. I'm not quite sure. But you know, I will be curious to see, as their relationship does deepen and they do get closer, what happens. Does he pull away? Because again, it sounds like he's still comparing, you know, when I met Danielle, I had a great connection, but it wasn't anything like when I met Laura, his late wife. And that it's impossible to compare. But again, I understand the tendency to do that and the guilt that comes with that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how her progression and her grief, how that could potentially help the two of them, or she could feel like they're in two different places and it could be too difficult. And it'll be interesting to see where that continues to play into their relationship, as it will inevitably, just the grief.
Yeah. Well, and she shared a quote, which, I mean, hit me right in the heart. A song lyric: "I lit a fire with the love you left behind." Wait, I'm going to say that again. "I lit a fire with the love you left behind." And it was, I was in tears when she shared that. And it seemed like that for him, it almost seemed as though it gave him permission to explore his feelings with Danielle, because it meant that he could kind of hold his love for his wife and hold the possibility of love for someone else. That those two, it's not like forgetting about his wife and moving on. It's about still holding her in so much in this relationship. And he also referenced that their two previous partners are so much a part of their current relationship, or the relationship that they're building. And I thought that was also so meaningful. And it's so, I mean, I'm making an assumption, but it seems very clear to me that they both have done a lot of self-work to be able to process and be so articulate and vulnerable with their experiences. Really impressive. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. I'm, you know, the human in me is really, really rooting for them both. They both seem like really amazing people who are ready to find love, and I hope they do that, whether that's with one another or with someone else. But wow, I'm so like grateful and thankful that they were able to share that with us, because that was really personal.
Right. And then just to reiterate what you said about people being able to see that displayed, is pretty profound.
Mm-hmm. I was also just thinking about the way that love after loss is typically portrayed, where it's almost as though like the other person didn't exist, or like you kind of just move on and the other person is left behind, or that the person that comes in is like the savior. Like there are all of these tropes about love after loss, and I don't think they're accurate, and they can be really damaging if you are someone who's experiencing a loss like that, a loss of a significant other, and you don't see yourself represented in the media or in movies or on TV. That can feel so isolating. And that's why I think this was, as you said, very profound to see that on TV.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're right about maybe what gets portrayed is so the afterwards is so romanticized, and so like this pretty picture of the move on kind of just gets like overshadowed from like what that person is actually going through and what they're actually bringing into the new relationship. So yeah, I mean, this wasn't that, and that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good job, Bachelor franchise.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll keep y'all posted about what happens with this relationship if you're not watching. Because as I said, I'm really invested. Very, very invested. I mean, I think we were all like, yay, Michael.
Yeah. Had to cheer for him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yay for Danielle too, but like
Yes.
Michael had just been there and you were seeing it where Danielle was a few years ago. So yeah. I don't remember much about like how much of her grief that she was going through in her season was put out on TV.
I was trying to think about that too, and so she was on Nick Viall's season, and so that was about the same. So she might have been about 5 or 6 years out from that loss by the time she was on his season, I think, if my math is mathing. But I don't remember. I was listening to Nick Viall's podcast this morning, and he was saying that Danielle was his first date, so it's possible that it came up on the first date, but I don't know. But I don't remember it being as prominent for her as it was for Michael on Katie's season. It was such a part of his arc, and the reason that he left was because he wasn't ready. And but I don't.
How far did Danielle make it?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
If you know, please let us know.
Oh my God.
I'll do some research.
Yeah.
But yeah, it felt like a different storyline for sure. Well, I know that there were other things that we had wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, there were 2 nights.
There were 2 nights. A lot happened.
That was the first night.
That was only the first night. Only halfway through the first night. So what Catherine and I had decided to do, because there was so much that we wanted to talk about, we're going to continue our conversation about what happened this week on Reactivity TV on our YouTube channel. But the things that we're going to be talking about there, for me, relate to panic attacks, to the concept of the other woman, and catastrophizing, overthinking. What do you got?
I definitely had catastrophizing. Really eager to hear about what you have to say about the other woman. And more lack of communication and expectations.
It's the theme.
It's just continuing to happen. So, yes, if you want to hear more Reactivity TV, we are going to continue on our YouTube channel.
Yes. And the link to our YouTube channel will be in the show notes.
Yeah.
We are continuing on with Reactivity TV because there was so much to cover on episode 6 and 7, beyond the dynamic between Michael A. and Danielle. And so I had a couple moments. I know you had a couple moments.
Yeah. I mean, definitely want to talk a little bit about catastrophizing. Jill, Lace, and Genevieve.
Of course.
Were there more?
No, I was just thinking Genevieve is an expert catastrophizer at this point.
Yes. So, beginning of the show, or beginning of this part of the episode, the original women were sent to another hotel. New women came in. Eventually, new men came into the new hotel with the other women, with the original women, and but as soon as that happened, as soon as the new women came in and the original women were being kind of kicked out, Jill, Lace, and Genevieve really started to spiral. They got very reactive, very emotional about the end of their relationships. The end.
What to you indicated the spiral? Like, how did you notice the spiral?
It's over, I'm going home, this is never going to work out.
I'm packing my bags right now.
He's going to find somebody else. All of the negative talk about the new girls, just
All of those thoughts. I know I had written down, I was watching and I was taking notes at like what they were saying. I was like scribbling. And I think Genevieve had said something like, he's probably out there on the beach. They're kissing, they're going on dates, they're this, they're that. And it was like, yeah, she was kind of like getting herself
made
kind
up
of
this whole
wound
story.
up. Yeah. And so, yes, I saw that too in terms of like the spiral, but we also like with the spiral came a shutdown where like they were literally like laid out
Not to be found.
not nowhere, like either sleeping all day in bed in the dark under the covers, like so that they had wound themselves up into like that shutdown that also is related to the catastrophizing.
Right. It became, well, if I can't have this relationship right now, if you're kicking me out for this week, I'm not going to do anything with my week.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they put so much emphasis and gave so much control to the situation and let that dictate what their week was going to be like, which as a viewer and as a therapist was really hard to watch and kind of frustrating because they took themselves out of having an opportunity to perhaps enjoy a piece of paradise. And it was so unproductive. I think you used that word before. It was so unproductive because they were imagining scenarios that they had no idea whether or not that they were happening or not, and they had no control over what was going to happen. And so it was such a waste of time and energy and care, like that amount of care and concern over a situation they had no control over.
Right. It wasn't getting them anywhere.
Let me ask you. If one of these people were in your office and were like catastrophizing, like what is something that you might set, like how might you, sorry.
I'm so nervous.
No.
Okay, no, go ahead.
But like how might you help them think about the situation differently?
Wow. Okay. I mean, first I would try to probably go the route of slowing down. I mean, they're at warp speed of concocting this idea that of this catastrophe, and they're thinking a mile a minute about all of this when none of it's happened yet, or don't know if it will happen. So I think that I would start by slowing them down and try to bring them into where they are right now, as opposed to where they're thinking they are. What would you do?
Yeah, I think similar. Like, let's slow down. Let's take a breath. Let's be here. And again, like, what do we know? What do we know for sure? Like, what are the facts?
Right.
Here?
We talked about anxiety and
Yes.
exactly, fact check.
And like that same discussion with anxiety, like, okay, is this helpful? Is this helpful to you to be thinking about these things that you're wondering are happening at the beach? No, it doesn't sound like it's helpful to you. It sounds like it's making things worse. So what can we do instead in order like for you to have experience a little bit of relief from this feeling that is literally draining you to the point where you're sleeping all day and in bed all day and crying all day. So I think that's what I would try to do in the moment. I think I would just try to, as you're saying, like help someone feel more grounded and try to get more realistic and helpful thoughts.
And also try to get a better understanding as far as how they got from that point of feeling secure and things are going really well to things are over. I mean, especially with Genevieve, we've seen a lot of high highs and a lot of low lows throughout the season. And there hasn't been a lot of a middle ground. And so I want to know what happens in that time period. I think there's a lot to be said as far as what can set somebody off into that spiral.
Yeah, that is something that Yeah, I'd be curious about too, because you're right. There's a lot of space in between feeling really good and then going to this more extreme reaction. And I think juxtaposed was Aaron, who's her partner, and they're operating with the same information. They've been in the relationship together. They've experienced the same dates. They've experienced the same affection, the same words. And Aaron, who can be a little bit more reactive, as we've seen him on previous seasons, he's chill. Like, he's secure in his feelings for Genevieve and in her feelings for him and their relationship and what they have. And she's
asked for him to do certain things, or she's given him credit for giving her certain things like physical affection and words of affirmation and these things that she maybe wasn't getting in the way she needed in her sort of relationship with Justin. And that was happening. As far as we know, that looked like it was happening. And so that gap between the really high and the really low, what else was going on for Genevieve? I don't know, I'll just continue to use her as an example.
Yeah, yes.
But what else is going on for her that we're not seeing? Because I don't think that she just went from 0 to 100, that there's a lot more going on there, that even when things look secure, that she's not.
Yeah, they don't feel secure.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. Okay. So, I had catastrophizing too, same thing. But in a maybe like related way, I just did want to point out, like, again, as therapists, that we did witness someone having a panic attack on TV.
Yeah.
And so the brief context is Casey, who at this point in the show really doesn't have a connection, and it's the night of the rose ceremony, and it seems pretty clear that he's gonna go home, and so I don't really know what his motivations were, but he decided to tell Brittany about something that Peter had said about her that wasn't very flattering and didn't feel true, I guess. And then this whole situation developed on the beach, where there was a lot of yelling, a lot of fighting, a lot of hurt feelings, and you could just see Casey getting like, oh no, I did not.
I'm responsible for this.
Yeah, I'm responsible for this. I feel bad. She feels bad. I did not intend for this to happen. And he's literally watching it. Like the other contestants are like down on the beach, and he's sitting back kind of watching this explosion go on. And he starts to say to Rodney, I'm starting to feel dizzy, man. Like, I'm feeling dizzy. And then I don't know if Rodney put it together or really understood how serious he was or what that meant. But then we saw Casey collapse, which was scary. And when he finally came to and the medic arrived, they had said, like, wanting to check his vitals and all that stuff. And while he might have been dehydrated and probably lacking sleep and probably also maybe, I don't know if he was drinking, I have no idea. But he did say, like, I think I was just really overwhelmed. And yeah, that can absolutely cause a panic attack, and that can be really scary. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that panic attacks are really scary. We can maybe feel beginning signs, warning signs that they're coming on, but they can feel so flooding, and but ultimately petrifying. And I'm glad that he was able to have care right away to make sure he was okay.
Yeah, that was definitely scary, and one way that people might not necessarily think about panic attacks. We talked about anxiety, and we talked about symptoms of that, and so people might be thinking about panic attacks in terms of the heart palpitations and shortness of breath, and but this is definitely one of those kinds of...
Yeah, he fainted. Yeah. He lost consciousness. Yeah, it was intense. Yeah, and I mean, I have experience of having a panic attack in that way where I've like, had like a blackout or like a loss of consciousness briefly, and it's really, really petrifying, and it is again one of those things that is important to normalize, like we talked about regarding grief in general, but like also being able to normalize, well, not normalize, but also like depict panic, that is an emotion that people can experience, and it is really scary. So
yeah, no, I'm glad you pointed that out. Another one that we've been continuing to see time and time again is that there's this lack of understanding around expectations, and I just can't say it enough that I am so frustrated by this. That I don't know if it was allowed, one. I don't know if it happened, two. But
it seemed, given the spiral that you just referenced, it seemed like
it didn't happen. Although, okay, well, first I'll just say that what I'm referring to is that when the original girls were sent away and they didn't know what was going to happen with their men, had to put that in quotes, but they didn't know what was going to happen with the guys. Why didn't they know? Like, why didn't they have any conversations around, hey, I really like what's going on right now. I'm really into you. I really want to see you in a week, and I'm really excited to see you in a week. I don't know which relationships could have said or could have suggested, through this week, I'd really want to stay exclusive, or, hey, let's keep our options open. Any kind of understanding of where I was going to go.
Yes.
And instead, they were just left to their own devices and their own catastrophizing thoughts. But not all of them were. So some of them that felt maybe more secure, Serene, Victoria, yeah, felt a little more secure, didn't do that. Then again, I think it was Aaron that said, Genevieve and I have an understanding. And I was like, well, Amy, you do.
It's not a mutual understanding.
Yeah, there's not a mutual understanding. But if she had known that, he was thinking that could have changed so much for her. And so she could have saved herself a lot of trouble there with all that catastrophizing, by having conversation together.
Yes. Yeah.
So that just really got to me. And so I don't know if they were just kind of like kicked out and like they weren't able to. Either way, those relationships that were had a little bit more of a question mark, needed more of a period.
Yes, well stated. Well, and yeah, the people that seemed okay, Serene, Victoria F., and so whether that's they were secure in their relationship, which I think was Serene and Brandon. Brandon. Thank you. And
I got it right.
And Victoria, who I think is just secure in herself.
Yeah. Jury's still out if she's like totally into Johnny or not.
Yeah. I think they can relate on their ability to just be hot people.
And that's fine.
But so I think whether it was spoken or not, there was some amount of security. And then the people that we saw catastrophizing were those who clearly didn't, whether ever, like in the span of their couple of days building a relationship, hadn't been really expressive about where they were. Because again, Catherine, it didn't have to happen when these quote unquote threats arrived. They could have been talking about where they were in a relationship.
Could be really productive. Could be really helpful.
Could be helpful to talk about your feelings and your expectations and your wants and your needs in a relationship. I mean, I know we've been saying it since the beginning of Reactivity TV, but we'll say it again. Do it.
Just like tell someone how you feel. Yeah. But the other women.
Yes. Okay.
The other woman. The other women in this case, I guess.
So I was having such a reaction to, and excuse my language, but some of the original women referring to the new women as bitches. And like, these bitches this, and if he has a bitch on him that. And I was like, I mean, as a woman who wants to support other women, like, I just don't like when women talk about each other that way in general. And I also, like, it reminded me of this idea of the quote-unquote other woman. Like, when someone does engage in an extramarital or extramarital affair, or has like an interaction outside of their relationship, that the woman is blamed always. Not, I hate using extremes, but like often, very often, is it the woman's fault? She was a slut. She was a this. She was a that. And there's no accountability for all parties involved, the man and the yourself. And so I just like, I had such a reaction to that. The bitches in general, but like, just this
the target
like
they're in the wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did not. You can tell. I feel like my face is getting hot. Just talking about it made me so angry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. I mean, the negative connotation with just calling these girls who, like, some of them know, mm-hmm. some of them are probably friends mm-hmm. with, if not mm-hmm. friendly with. They're all in the franchise. Mm-hmm. They all know each other somehow. So they're calling them outright bitches. But it has nothing to do with them. One, like, it's not on them that they're there. This was a producer's move to bring these people in, and, like, this is the show, mm-hmm. which they did get mad at the show. They were like, how are you guys doing this to us? But for the most part, they were just mad at these women mm-hmm. who, like, were here because they signed up just like you did. Mm-hmm. And they just got here because that's when they were assigned to get there. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. why are you taking out on them?
Right. Well, I guess it's safer and easier maybe to blame them as this, like, new seductress coming in.
Rather than the question mark on your relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's harder to do, to think like, oh, maybe my relationship isn't as secure as it was. Mm-hmm. Or maybe this isn't really a good match. Maybe we are on different pages. That's a lot harder to do. But it's important to do in order to not villainize someone who literally is doing nothing wrong. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. They're arriving.
Yeah, they are literally arriving. They're literally at the same place and same time as someone else. Mm-hmm.
And also, since we're just getting reactive here, it really bothered me that then, as mad as they all seemed to be when that happened, as soon as men were introduced to their side of it, oh, Jesse, we're not mad at you anymore. Oh, this is fine. Mm-hmm. So as soon as it was a level playing field, because this is a game, then it all became okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I mean, and even that was kind of temporary, because then they're like, oh, we don't actually like these guys except Tyler. So, mm-hmm. so that, but yeah.
Right. The double standard was so frustrating. Well, and also, like, not being able to generalize, right? Like, Genevieve's a good example. Like, okay, other attractive men have come in, and look, hey, I still want to be with Aaron. I wonder if Aaron is feeling the same way. Like, being able to kind of,
that
like...
That sounded really rational.
kind of generalize in order to like help reduce your worry. I know I said this to you off mic, but I sometimes feel like watching this show is like watching a horror movie when you see when like the killer is in the house and you see someone running up the stairs and you're like, no,
That's
don't
not the way.
do it. Don't do it. You're gonna get hurt. That's what this feels like, especially around the expectations thing. It reminds me of that. Like, don't do it. You're gonna get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're only halfway through, people, so we've got a lot more to react to in the coming weeks.
It's gonna get heated.
I'm literally sweating. All right, well, we'll be back next week with Reactivity TV for episodes 8 and 9.
See you then.
See you there.